thank you all for being here and for caring enough about how you vote to invite the league, which is over 100 years old. I know we don't look a day over 99, but we were born when the women's suffrage, when we finally fought for and finally got our hard-won right to vote in 1920. So I want to remind you that the League does not support or oppose candidates. However, one of the links that you'll be getting is to a website called Voters Edge, where you can get information about all candidates who submitted, but they don't have to pay the hefty fee that they pay to get in these books. And for judge, not just the top offices, but for judges and not unfortunately for offices like county committee, which I know throw me at times, but some of the other offices, and it's totally impartial. And it also has up-to-date information about who's paying what for what proposition, and I'll be giving you that information today too. The League, however, does advocate for on positions after we have studied something. For example, right now locally we've been studying criminal justice for a number of years, the environment ever since I've been in the League, transportation, education, and of course our work with voting rights. We welcome membership to men and women, and by going on one of the websites, we've had men on our board. We had a male president a few years ago, and so one of the websites, the links I've given you is for membership. So we certainly invite your membership. One of the things that I was thinking of in going out and doing these ballot measures is, people say, well, why are we voting on all this stuff? We pay legislators to do this. I voted on this before. Why am I saying it again? And I think about the people all over the world who are fighting for the right to vote. So it makes me look a little differently at this uber democracy we fortunately have in California. So, but I know you care about it, or you wouldn't be here. Okay, so let's get down to the ballot. The materials I passed out are our easy voter guide. And Murky mentioned, on KPCC, they have this 1 minute summaries of the propositions. And this is kind of the same thing. I'm going to probably tell you, I have to resist telling you much more than you wanted to know. But I'm going to tell you some of the tidbits I've learned in preparing for this. But those, so the Easy Voter Guide, looking at that after, will remind you of just the 1 minute reasons that you may be voting yes or no on something. So on this ballot, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to present all of the state measures and one of the city measures, because it's something that has been getting publicity. I've got mailers on it, and that's Measure ULA. And Sandy, well, you'll hear this one probably will be near and dear to your heart, because LA Family Housing is one of the supporters of that initiative, and a Class B member heads that wonderful organization. But we'll get to that. So there are 7 state propositions, and one of them was put on the ballot by the legislature. The rest were done by citizen initiative. And I'll tell you which ones as I go on. One of them is 31 is a referendum. And I'll try to get as basic as I can on that because those are always confusing. Because, does a yes vote mean yes? Does a yes vote mean no? Remember, we've gone through this, right, over the years. So I hope I make it clear. And if I don't, ask me. Okay. I'm going to, so the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to do 26 and 27 first. And then I'll go back to 1, and then I'll take them in order. Okay? So 26 and 27, the 2 gaming measures. Indian sports betting measures that involve the tribes, California tribes. So let's do 26 first. This is an initiative constitutional amendment and statute. So a group of citizens got together, put this on the ballot. It needs a majority vote to pass. And here's a good way of thinking about the difference between 26 and 27, because the ads come fast and furious. We get one, we get the other, it gets confusing. There are natives in both ads. All right. So 26 deals with, they refer to it as retail sports betting. It's in-person sports betting, okay? And the question that we're asked to vote on is, should California do really 2 things? One, increase the allowable gambling activities at American-owned casinos and horse racing tracks, and then allow sports betting so it's increasing gambling activities in the casinos, all right? The types of games they can play, I'll break that down. And the second part is to allow sports betting at, I'll tell you, the 4 horse racing tracks and at Indian-owned casinos. So it's increasing the games that they're allowed to play and the sports betting at the casinos and the racing tracks. So what's the background on this? The California Constitution generally prohibits gambling, but over the years, we know you, or at least enough people in the state, have amended it to allow some forms of gambling, right? So we have the lottery, we have card rooms, we have, and in the card rooms, games similar to poker are played. And of course, we have betting on horse races. And then in the late 80s, we voted in gaming at Indian-owned casinos after the Supreme Court said, the US Supreme Court said this was an okay thing to do. But sports betting on football games, baseball games, is not allowed in California. It is allowed. I read 33 states. Michael Hiltzik today said 35 or 36, but 33 or 35 states do allow some type of sports betting. There is virtual sports betting that goes on. I've never seen anybody doing this, however. They do, these fantasy games, and that is allowed. All right, American Indian tribes do not pay state or local taxes. However, they do pay fees to state and local governments when they have casinos. And the rate is determined in separate compacts or agreements that are ranged between the government entity and the tribe. Right now, 66 casinos are operated in California by 63 tribes. These are federally recognized tribes. They have to fulfill certain historical governmental requirements to get recognition. So what does the proposal allow them to do? They will be allowed now to run roulette and dice games like craps. Up to this point, they couldn't do that, okay? They will allow tribal casinos and 4-horse tracks, Santa Anita, Del Mar, Los Alamitos, and Golden Gate, to offer on-site betting on sports events like football and baseball. And then all the nuances in the football, you know, how many downs this person is going to get, how many passes they'll make, etc. No betting, however, would be allowed on high school sports or on California colleges. People over 12, only, and this is only open to people over 21. There will be a 10% tax on sports betting at racetracks, and a new fund would be created for this to go into. And the different tribal contracts or compacts would determine what their fee would be and where it would go. And here's how the tax revenue would go. And keep this in mind, because this is a big difference from 27. The money is going into the general fund, 70% of the money, the big pot that pays out everything that is paid for and with our taxes. And education is a biggie. And thinking about this, you realize why the opposition is what it is. So 70% is going to go to that, and 15% for programs dealing with gaming, mental health research, and money also to the state to help enforce this, because now more enforcement will be needed. Another thing that is going to be allowed is something different, and this is why the card clubs are really against this. And you've probably gotten mailers, I have, from some of the card clubs, card rooms. It will allow private lawsuits by the tribes to say, you know, those clubs are violating the law. Right now, they couldn't do that. These were only public lawsuits. This will allow private lawsuits. And I know one of the ads I heard or read was very concerned about that. So what is the fiscal effect? Well, it's difficult to predict, according to the legislative analysts, because it depends upon these agreements and how much the tribes are going to pay for the revenue that they make from these. The supporters say this will continue aid to American Indians to develop self-sufficiency and lift them out of poverty. They are a large employer in many of their communities, and it has been a tremendous boost to their economies. Apparently, they have created, casinos create over 150,000 jobs in California. This will allow in-person wagering at highly regulated Indian casinos, bringing in more revenue. And in-person verification will be easy to make, unlike 27, where people are holding up a phone and making a sports bet. Okay. So the opposition, this will contribute to gambling addiction. And in Sunday paper, LA Times had a good article about gambling addiction. There is concern, as I mentioned, over the private lawsuits. This will benefit 5 wealthy gaming tribes and drive the card rooms, often in lower income communities, out of business. And what you see in the ads, they have Latinos saying, you know, these card rooms are in our communities and they're going to suffer. The supporters include the large tribes, as I mentioned, such as the Pechanga, the Agua Caliente, 19 California city and county Democratic committees, the Indian Chamber of Commerce, and they have raised over $111 million. Get your calculators out, because these two measures, 26 and 27, have resulted in contributions, one side or the other, over $400 million at this point. The opposition includes the Republican Party of California, California Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, Hawaiian Gardens Casino, Hollywood Parks Casino. Okay. So, and they have raised $42 million, over $42 million. The newspapers, our local papers, both of our papers are against it. Daily News and the LA Times, the LA Times. Mm-hmm. Okay. So I'm going to go on to 27 and then I'll take a few questions. Okay.
Can you just repeat about?
Oh, I'm sorry. Did you have a question about?
You said, you asked, oh, I thought you asked a question.
All right. Okay, I'll take 26 and 27 questions after. All right. So this was in-person sports betting. Okay, you have to go there. One group that's opposing it is the animal welfare. Why? Because the horse racing tracks, it'll, okay, because of their poor record with the horses. All right, 27. This allows online and mobile sports wagering outside of the tribal lands. This is also a constitutional amendment. So a group of people got together, had enough signatures, got this on the ballot, and it too needs a majority to pass. So what will this do? And now we'll see some of the differences. Again, adults over 21 or older only. Would allow online betting on sports, but not high school sports. Allowed tribes to offer online betting. And in terms of the fees, there are two levels of fees. $10 million licensing fee if a tribe wants to do this, and this will be renewed every 5 years. And a $100 million fee, this is one time only, for the big gaming companies who are, these are the ads, the big gaming companies are coming in here and going to have this sports betting. They will have to pay $100 million one time, and then every 5 years there will be a licensing fee for them. All companies offering sports betting will have to pay a 10% tax. And here's the big difference. In 27, after paying the expenses of running it and watching over it, monitoring it, the fees are going to go in as special funds, and this is why the ads are help solve the homeless problem in California. Because that special fund, 85% will be used for homelessness and related mental health programs, and 15% will go to American Indian tribes that are not involved in sports betting. As an aside, right now, every year, smaller tribes or tribes that have only a few slot machines, there's some number that they've decided is okay, but then above that they get help. They get $150 million a year from the casinos that are in betting right now. So the smaller tribes have been helped all along and will continue to be helped. The 26th, and so both 26 and 27 will both legalize sports betting in some way. And it is possible that both will take effect. However, the latest feeling seems to be that if they both take effect, it'll go to court, things will stop, because there will be someone who's going to say there's some duplication and it should be this one and not that one. And if it's ruled that that's the case, because that's not allowed with initiatives, then the one with the higher vote will win. So either they both could lose, they don't get a majority vote. If one gets the higher vote, well, then that one's in. But if they both get a majority vote and it goes to court, and the court rules that there's, they're at odds with each other, there's some fine print that doesn't work for both of them, then the one with the higher vote will win. So the fiscal effect, again, it depends. How many entities will offer it, the deals that the compacts that they make and negotiate, how many people engage in this. If they're doing this, are they then not going to go to the casinos? And, the casinos are a tremendous source of revenue, in their fees for the state. So that's unknown. The supporters say this will provide hundreds of millions of dollars to support programs to alleviate homelessness, mental health, and addiction. This will benefit every tribe, especially rural and small tribes. The technology is sophisticated enough, say the supporters, that those who are under 21 will not be able to do it. So my grandson Jay may get a brilliant idea to try this. He's 14, won't let him. And the other argument is, well, for a lot of things that we're asked to decide on, people are doing it anyway. People are doing sports betting illegally anyway right now. So why not have California tribes benefit? So the supporters say. The opposition, though, said, those who oppose it say, the state hasn't done a very good job of regulating marijuana. How are they going to regulate sports betting? Let's see. I mentioned that. And again, there is this concern about gambling addiction and that this will open it up to even more addiction. And as the Times article said, in states that have allowed sports betting, there has been an increase in calls about people who are addicted to gambling. So who are these tribes? Well, there are I mentioned these small tribes. There are 3 small tribes who are supporting it. The big gaming companies, BetMGM, FanDuel, Crown Gaming, Major League Baseball. Okay. The opposition, both California and Republican parties are opposed. Once in a while, they do agree. The heads of each branch of government are the state government in California. Both Republican and Democrat are against it. Over 50 California tribes are against it. And I mentioned, and the money, okay, to get your calculator out again. So the yes side has raised only $169 million, but the no side, $228 million. Okay. So a yes vote means that you want to allow online, mobile, and sports betting in California. And a no vote means you want to keep it as it is and have people have to walk in to a casino to do any betting or to a card room to gamble in California. All right, so now question.
Carol,
There's an ad on TV, which I don't know which of the propositions it's for. But it said, it's against it, and it says $90 million will leave the state.
They're think because the gaming companies are all out-of-state companies. That's
That
why.
would be 27.
27. Yeah, and it's interesting, the Daily News, if you get that, I know there are at least two people in this congregation, like Carolyn Rothberg and I guess. Oh, three people, one my neighbor, my God. Yeah. Oh, you get it, okay. All right, so the green sheet, right? So the Daily News said they're in favor of sports betting, but they're against the fact that it's going to be a monopoly of these big companies because the requirements are so rigid that they have to be huge to even want. It's only a big company that can afford, the $100 million. I mean, what this is, really telling you is how much money is to be made in all of this. I mean, that's the bottom line. If they're willing, to put all that money, yes.
Well, one of the things that has made me uncomfortable is all of the ads are kind of saying you need to pick one. You can't just say no to both of them.
Oh, you can say no to both. You can say yes to both. Yeah.
But I mean, the way they're presenting it is they want at least something to pass where it's gambling.
Right.
And
right.
You're opposed to gambling, then you just vote no.
These are our votes this year. Usually you say, well, does this go along with my values? Well, did I vote when we allowed gaming back in the 80s? Well, I'm not going to tell you how I voted, but I'll bet you guess if you know me. Do I want to expand it? That's a good question. That's a good question. Yeah, Murphy.
I'm just wondering how they will really have controls on whose phone they're playing these games.
Well,
When you talked about your 14-year-old, anybody who knows kids now, it can be on your sons, it can be anything. How would they be accountable for their age?
The question, if you can, how would they be accountable for the age? The argument is that software is such now that it allows it to block. I guess it's the same. I never had the situation of a young person in the house where I could block their access to something like who's watching, right? When I go on Netflix, who's watching? Well, my son has my Netflix account and he has his dog's name on it. So I say Sluggo is watching, right? He likes dog cartoons. No, just one more question, yeah.
The money that's going to be made from either one of these is the homelessness one, is it just to go for homelessness within the tribes?
No, okay, good question. Does it it goes for total homeless in the whole state. The question was, is it only homelessness in the tribe?
That's a 10%.
Right, the homeless part of it gets 85%.
Of the 10%.
Of the 10%, but I didn't mention, I forgot, one of the important groups that is opposing this is the Teachers Association. How did I forget that? Because the money is now going in a special fund. So this is not subject to the mandatory money, we call it the Proposition 98 money that goes to education. So this is off limits for education, and the CTA is in opposition to. I always like to know, why is they opposing? Yeah, Jerry, say one more, go ahead.
Yeah, I haven't read it yet, but on 26, it says, allow private lawsuits against illegal gambling in some situations.
Yeah, so, because it's trying to make it simple. Apparently it's if they want to really go after the gambling and the card clubs.
Well, if the tribes are, is it what, 24, 20, however many throughout the entire state of California.
Well, there are 110 federally recognized tribes in California.
Casinos are there.
Pardon me?
How many casinos are there?
66 casinos operated by 63
And that's
tribes.
spread all over the state. of
All over
California.
the
So
state.
The nearest one here might be the Morongo, which is,
Right.
which is 100 and some odd miles
Right.
away from LA. And the question is, are they gonna be able to close down in Glendale or wherever we have the whatever it is, you know, which doesn't seem right.
Well, one
I'm
of
not
the-
against gambling, but I don't wanna stop other people from doing it, or make them drive 100 miles to go to a casino.
One of the things I learned in researching the whole situation of the gaming is, you know, from the get-go, there's been this little war going on between Indian casinos and card rooms. I mean, you know, they're in the same business. And so this just gives the tribes another arrow in their quiver. And this is one of the reasons that it has come up. It may very well be, you know, it's a very unlikely situation, but it's one of the things they're concerned about.
Maybe within a certain number of miles of
Well, you know, lawsuits happen.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go on and then take this, and then I'll get more questions at the end. Okay, so write your question down. All right, so go back to Prop 1 now. Proposition 1. So this is a legislative constitutional amendment. Legislative constitutional amendment. And it too requires a majority vote. So it took 2/3 of each house of the legislature, California legislature, to put it on the ballot. And by the way, there were Republicans and Democrats in those votes. And it's really about the constitutional right to reproductive freedom. So the question is, should the California Constitution expressly provide that the state of California shall not deny or interfere with an individual's reproductive freedom, including the right to choose to have an abortion and the right to choose or refuse contraception. So prior to 1973, abortions were, this is some background, and I'm only talking nationally, then I'll get to California. Abortions were prohibited in 33 states and allowed in special circumstances in 13 others. And then Roe v. Wade came along by the US Supreme Court, and it ruled that the Constitution recognizes the protected right to choose an abortion as part of its right to privacy provisions. And there have been various court cases, as we know, over the years, or we've been learning. We've all been getting a good lesson in that, haven't we, over these last months? They have upheld Roe v. Wade, the US Supreme Court. But of course, this changed dramatically with the Dobbs decision. And the Supreme Court overruled Roe v. Wade and eliminated any federal protection for the right to choose an abortion. And their basis is that the Constitution has to explicitly mention a right to have it okayed. And tradition, in history and tradition, this right has to be deeply rooted in history and tradition. And furthermore, if we recall, Justice Clarence Thomas, in his concurring opinion, stated that federal protection for other personal rights, such as contraception and same-sex marriage, should also be considered. So now again, California has been different, and we've been going along because here, our Constitution also talks about the right to privacy. And our California's Supreme Court has said that extends to an individual's decision to have an abortion. Statutory law here in California also has decided that any personal reproductive choices are legal to make, including not only abortion, but to choose or refuse birth control. And here's a very important point. According to statutory law in California, abortions, the only time the state can restricts abortions after viability, and generally that means 24 weeks, unless the woman's life is threatened. Unless the woman's life is threatened, and at that point, the abortion can be performed without breaking the law. So why are we voting on this? Well, in light of the decisions at the federal level, there have been fears expressed or concerns as to whether there's a different court in California in the future. Who knows? Or different people ruling our legislature who have different views. And so the legislature wanted this to be more clear in our Constitution. And so they put this on the ballot. A similar measure is also on the ballot in Vermont and Michigan. So they're going to be voting on something similar. So what is the proposal? It prohibits the state from denying or interfering with an individual's reproductive freedom, including abortion and contraception, yea or nay. There is no direct budgeted impact on this because the state already pays in its Medi-Cal programs and cover California for abortions. And people coming in from other states cannot take advantage of these programs because they have to be California residents. All right, but the opponents are saying women already. So supporters say we can't any longer count on the federal government, and it's important to enshrine this specific right in our Constitution. Opponents say women already have these choices, and the Supreme Court decision won't change that. And then there's this feeling that viability is going to be abused. And there was a discussion at a presentation I did yesterday. I'm concerned about that. But as somebody said, doctors don't want to lose their licenses. And so an abortion can be performed after 24 weeks if the mother's life is threatened by giving birth to the child. The supporters include the California Medical Association, different levels of Planned Parenthood, American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists. Opponents include the Republican Party of California, the California Conference of Catholic Bishops, and a group called Democrats for Life of America. The pro side has raised $11 million. And this is interesting. The biggest contributor is an Indian reservation in Sonoma County. I don't know how league-like it would be to speculate on why that particular Indian reservation, except a certain governor of ours, he probably knows them quite well. Because that certain governor has kicked in $800,000 to support this. The no side, very little support financially, $128,000. Some small Republican club in the East Valley, they're called East Valley Republicans, and then another group. So the yes vote means you want to strengthen the right to reproductive freedom in our state constitution. And a no vote means that you think things are fine. We don't need to increase. Okay, yeah.
Sarah, something else might. If it is, I'm definitely for that, because it's solid when it's in the constitution of the state. But it just still doesn't supersede what the Supreme Court did.
Well, it's a lot stronger than if it's only in statute here. The concern is that the US Supreme Court overrules all. But if it's in our
Oh, I know.
our state constitution.
It's strong.
The big concern, that we expressed in our training was what about Lindsey Graham and his proposal to have a federal abortion law. And of course, well, for one thing, it doesn't look as though he's getting a lot of, the support he needs for it. And it'll go to court. It'll go to court. But Jerry, do you want to add to that in any way about the courts?
What the Supreme Court said was that under Roe v. Wade, there was a federal constitutional right to privacy, and that therefore abortion was allowed up to, but what at that time they felt was viability, which was, the first as a third type of thing. What the current Supreme Court said was it is not a federal constitutional right, period. Therefore, states, you do what you want to do. If under your own constitution or your own laws, you want to make it legal or not legal or nothing, hands off by us.
Oh,
Yeah, that's what Dobbs was.
Right.
Yeah.
So we could actually do it in Florida?
Oh,
Well,
sure.
with that
That's what's happening. You've seen these other states that are coming down with these laws saying, no abortion at all, and the Supreme Court said, they haven't said it yet, but they will say, fine, that's up to the state. Right. That's all that Dobbs did. It took it out as a federal right. The thing I don't understand here is the 24 weeks of viability or whatever. I don't know if this even mentions it, but if this is a constitutional amendment that says that you can have unlimited abortions, then that wouldn't work.
It doesn't say that.
Okay.
Okay, it's the statute has, the more of a definition. The amendment doesn't say you can have free choice, free willing on abortion. No, it leaves it to statute. But thank you for clarifying that. Thank you. Right. Yeah, I'm going to go on because we'll be here, and I will hang around after if you're still commenting or questioning. All right, so now 28. And this is a fairly, cut and dry, I think. And this provides additional funding for arts and music education in public schools. And it also requires a majority vote. So the question is, should the state provide specific funding for arts and music education in public schools? So the background is that Proposition 98, passed in 1988, required that a minimum percentage of the state budget calculated annually be spent on K to 14 education. So that's all the way through community college. There's currently no guaranteed source of annual funding for arts and music education, although state law requires schools to provide that for all students in grades 1 to 6. 7 and 8 have to be offered as an elective, and the high school requirement is that during their high school time, they have to have completed 1 year of arts and music education to graduate. 60% of our California public school students are low-income students. So they come from families that are not giving them extra arts and music education, or families that are answering a call by the school to kick in for art and music programs. That's why this proposal is there. So it would require that the state set aside a portion of the general fund, it's 1% of the general fund. So what was that in dollars last year? It's about $1 million. And so if this goes through in this year's
Billion.
billion, B with a boy, sorry, you get it. As soon as I said it, that didn't sound, that's $1 billion. Okay, because 96 billion is going, to education in California. So it's about $1 billion would go to art and music. And the distribution would be based on enrollment and also an extra amount for kids in low-income areas. The principal will decide how the money will be spent. And if a certain percentage 80% has to be spent on staff and training and then supplies. And this can be spent on lots of different programs: dance, theater, digital music, screenwriting, animation. And then local school boards have to certify that this is in fact happening and it's being spent properly and how it's being used. And the fiscal impact, as I mentioned, would be about $1 billion. So supporters say only 1 in 5 schools have a dedicated teacher for art and music. It doesn't raise taxes. And those against it say this is ballot box budgeting. In other words, when we go and we fill out, ink in our little spot, we're determining how the money is being spent rather than the legislature. All right, so the biggest supporter is our former superintendent, as you may know, Austin Buettner. This was a biggie for him, and he's already kicked in over $5 million to get this passed. And the CTA has put in $2 million, Steve Ballmer $1.5 million, and Fender Musical Instruments, I wonder what, $1.2 million. Yeah, and this is really interesting. If you look in your big thick book from the state, no opposition, it's blank on that page. So, and interestingly, both local papers support it, the Times and the Daily News. Even though, usually there's a caveat, even though we're against ballot box budgeting, this is really important because it increases, I don't have to explain to this group why music education is important. Yeah.
Carol, isn't there somewhat of a throwback? I think you said the 80s, I thought it was later than that. Take away, it's not important. Art, music, those aren't important things in the schools. At that point in time, much of that funding was gone. So this seems to be an attempt in a good a good attempt to begin to put more money into those particular things.
Right, there used to be.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Right, yeah.
It's a philosophy change. It's one of these.
Well, yeah, what I discovered was that in New York, what they paid for pupil is probably at least twice as much as we pay for pupil.
Yeah.
And I just think that this is.
Yeah, okay, so we'll move on because all right, 29. So 29 is an initiative statute, and this requires a majority vote. And yes, you've seen this before, a little different. In fact, before, twice. In the past, over $200 million has been spent over the last 4 years to defeat similar measures. Okay. So the question is, and I'm going to be very quick with this because we're getting short on time. Should outpatient dialysis clinics be required to have a physician, nurse practitioner, or physician assistant on site at all hours when patients are being treated? And should they give various clinic-related information to patients in the state? And I'm going to skip through this and just highlight some of the things, how this may be different from what we voted on in the past and turned down by a big vote. One is that now they have to report if someone who's on there, right now, a federal requirement that a physician be affiliated with these clinics. She or he does not have to be there, but they have to be affiliated. Well, now they have to say if they are benefiting financially from any of these clinics. So that has to be divulged. Some of the other requirement, and it also requires, it says that these clinics have to treat all patients equally if they're Medi-Cal or Medicare, which most are. The supporters, again, are a union, the SEIU, the Service Employees Healthcare Workers Union, because they want unionized people working in these clinics. And as the Times pointed out the other day, they're trying to, wear down the owners of these clinics because they make a huge profit. And they say, for patient safety, this is important. It's on, the fiscal impact, it could be that some of the smaller clinics just won't afford to keep their doors open, and they'll have to close. And so, the three biggest supporters are DaVita, Fresenius, and US Renal. And the SEIU, this union, is the biggest opposition. The yes side has raised over 8 million, and the no side over 86 million to defeat it. That's these companies. And those who have had treatment that I have heard from say that the nurses who work there or the clinicians are highly skilled in treating renal patients. And they already have to report infections caused by the treatment to the state and the feds. But the oppositions, the ones who want this extra measure, say that if they're not well monitored. Okay, yes.
What about uninsured?
What about
uninsured? No medical insurance.
I'm sorry.
What about uninsured people?
It
talks about they have to take people with Medi-Cal or
private
What
insurance?
about people who don't have any insurance?
Don't have, well, then they go up, don't have insurance, but don't qualify for Medi-Cal. Is that what, it seems, I don't know how to answer that question. What are people who don't have insurance and if they,
A lot of people don't have.
they don't have coverage, right? They're diddled. I modified the word I was going to use, but one concern is that the costs will go up because if clinics have to hire more staff, guess who's going to pay for it? And if the feds are not paying, i.e. us or the state, then it's private insurance and that will go up. Yeah, and those rates, as you know, are a lot higher. I have a family member who has that situation. Yes?
My question is, when it says the effect on the state budget will be monumental, don't the individual establishments, Fresenius, with those companies, won't they have to pay for the additional medical supervision?
They will, but how are they going to pay? They'll negotiate different contracts with the state. They'll say, if you want to send all these people, the costs will go up.
That's what you're saying, the state will have to absorb.
Or the state will absorb it. But no doubt they'll negotiate new contracts so that, someone's going to pay. And if it's the state, then it's us. Yeah.
Well, having had a loved one receiving dialysis for some time, and sitting there watching what goes on, I'm all in favor of having more medical supervision.
Interesting. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I have a question. The way this reads, it sounds like there is nobody who is currently licensed. There's no physician, because it says requires physician, nurse practitioner, or physician assistant on site during treatment, which I read as saying a doctor can open these places up someplace and they can have just an aide working.
Right.
Nobody's there. They're
Right,
residents.
it's not a requirement. Right,
Thank you. So this one.
yeah. Okay, 30 and 31.
So how do these newspapers?
Oh, the new, okay, thank you. Both newspapers are against it. Both newspapers are against it, yeah. Okay, 30. 30 has a lot of people scratching their head, right? Okay. So, because our governor came out with this big ad, why? So again, this is an initiative statute, so this is not in the Constitution, it's a law and a majority vote. And it provides funding for programs to reduce air pollution and prevent wildfires by taxing people with income over $2 million a year. So the question is, should the tax rate on people who are making that money be increased by 1.75% and the revenue dedicated to two things: zero emissions vehicles, or two areas, I should say, emissions infrastructure, EV, as they say, charging stations, and wildfire prevention and suppression and prevention. And the background, well, we know our environmental situation now. We have drought, we have air pollution from the wildfires, we have gas-powered vehicles, and this is one step to alleviate that. However, in California, again, we're in the forefront, and we've already taken steps. Mission level has to be 40% below 1990 levels by the year 2030. There's also, and here's the biggie, rideshare companies such as Uber and Lyft by 2030, so that's not that far away, 90% of their drivers have to be driving EVs, electric vehicles, or zero emission vehicles. Further, a current plan the governor just issued and was approved in August said about 2035, all new vehicles sold in California have to be zero emission vehicles. Now, the state has recently committed to spending $10 billion over the next 5 years on zero emission vehicles, and is spending $10 billion, again with a B, and currently spending 2 to 4 annually on wildfire response. And this money would, if this proposition passes, it would be in addition to what we're spending already. So the proposal, as I said, to increase the income tax rate, that will raise the tax rate in California, individual income tax rate, to the highest in the country. It'll be over 15%. Right now, people making over $1 million, 1%, they're being surcharge of 1% for mental health programs, if you remember, was voted on a few years ago. So what's going to happen to this money? 45% will promote the purchase of zero emission vehicles, this includes cars and trucks. 35% will increase availability of infrastructure, i.e. charging stations. And 20% will help fund wildfire suppression and prevention. And here's a big thing that the proponents are saying: at least half the funds have to go into disadvantaged communities, to people living in disadvantaged communities. and the location of the charging stations, and they're going to make sure this is available. This surcharge will run for 20 years on those larger incomes, unless there are 3 consecutive years where the greenhouse gas emissions are 80% below 1990 levels. The fiscal effect, the ledge analyst is predicting $3.5 billion extra in revenue. And supporters are saying existing programs are insufficient to address our poor air quality. This will make EVs more affordable, will allow for green paying, will help create green paying jobs, will fund critically needed programs to prevent wildfires and protect homes. And there's strict accountability to how this is being spent or divvied out. Opponents say we're already spending more than $50 billion for climate investment. And this is no guarantee that this is going to make these EVs more affordable for low-income people. In fact, one of the big arguments, it's only going to help higher income people. It locks money from income taxes, again, just as that other proposition, into a special fund. And so if the California teachers are against this. And of course, the biggie that we hear about, this is Lyft's attempt, Lyft, not Uber. Uber, according to the LA Times, Uber has not put money into this or helped write the initiative, but they'll benefit. And this will be their attempt to get taxpayers to foot the bill for their requirement. And the other concern is that this is going to strain the power grid. I mean, I remember, a few weeks ago when it got so hot, my hair dryer won't work. Yeah, the power is going to go out. But, we went through that just a few weeks ago, if you recall. Don't use a single thing, right? At a certain hour of the day when it was 180. The supporters include, now this is the most interesting part of it. But, if you're the one who said, I'm going to look at who the supporters are, and if they're my gals and guys, the California Democratic Party, Natural Resources Defense Council, Union of Concerned Scientists, CAL FIRE, American Lung Association, and the LA Times. The opposition, Howard Jarvis, Taxpayers Association, California Teachers Association, Republican Party, and guess our governor. And so there's all kinds of press out there. Why? All right, we'll leave it up to you to decide why. He says it's because this is just a now subsidy to a single company. The yes side has raised 47 million, and the no side over 15 million. Okay.
Yeah, I just checked, the LA Times vote says no, they do not support it.
Oh, I'm sorry, thank you. No, the Times said no, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Okay, and right, thank you for correcting me. The LA Times says no. And the Daily News, I believe, they said no too. The Daily News. The one where they have punted so far is one. They haven't taken a stand on one, the two chain. They haven't.
LA Times on one says yes.
Oh, one is yes, but the Daily News has not taken a stand on properly. Not yet. They have a few more weeks to get convinced. Okay, 31. Okay.
Do you need something to drink?
I still have some, thank you. So 31 is a referendum, an initiative referendum. And how does this work? The legislature passes a law, and immediately a group that says, we don't want that law, we're going to take up signatures. And so you can't put the law into effect. And there are laws, right? There are initiatives, referenda right now going around for laws, against laws that were passed by our legislature very recently. So this one is regarding flavored tobacco products. And the question is, should the law that California passed banning these certain flavored products go into effect? So here's a case where the people who put it on the ballot want you to vote no. All right, got that? They want you to vote no, because a yes vote means yes, I want the ban to go into effect. Yes, I want these flavored products not to be allowed. Okay, so a yes vote means you want the law to go into. I know it's counterintuitive, right? Why are you spending these millions to tell you to vote no? So a yes vote. What is the background? The legislature passed in 2020 a law that said certain tobacco products can't be sold, and that includes e-cigarettes and menthol cigarettes. The federal FDA is considering stricter rules, but hasn't passed them yet. And LA City has passed a ban on menthol, but it hasn't gone into effect, menthol cigarettes. So the yes vote means, as I say, the law goes into effect, and this is over the counter and vending machines. The fiscal impact, it's kind of all over the place, because tobacco products for sale are a big moneymaker for the state. So if people are, not smoking these things, if kids, it's really for young people start with these kinds of tobacco products. If they're not doing that, then there's less money going into the state. However, people are healthier, so they're not going to emergency rooms, therefore. So it's hard to predict the fiscal impact. So the proponents say this is a gateway to tobacco addiction, and 85% of menthol advertising is to the Black community. And so there's people, and it's groups in the Black community that want this law to go into effect, groups who care about health. The opponents say this is just prohibition, and it's just going to make the illegal market, which already exists out there, even bigger. Supporters, the biggest supporter is Michael Bloomberg. And he has already kicked in over $6 million, almost $7 million.
Has he moved to California?
No, has he moved to California? No, but I know someone who's his cousin. Kaiser Health Foundation and the California Teachers Association. And of course, the people who are paying for you to vote no include the big tobacco. All right, Philip Morris, R.J. Reynolds. All right, so again, a yes vote means yes, let this ban go into effect. A no vote means, don't keep things as they are. All right, are there any more questions or comments? Let me just briefly, do you want me to briefly say something about yeah.
I have one question about a different one.
On a different one?
Yeah, that number 27 is sports.
27, all right, that was the online, okay.
I remember years and years ago that they put a gambling thing on the ballot, and they said, and they were pitching that the money would be sent to the schools. And I thought, oh, that sounds great. Of course, it's the lottery. And I voted yes for it. And I thought it was great. And then later on, I hear it's like such a small percentage, like 1% or whatever. I don't know the number, but it was a tiny bit. And so this is doing the same thing. It doesn't say how much it goes to the homeless and what percentage they need and how much. Let's say they need 100 billion and it gives you 1 billion.
Well, don't forget, that's a very brief, the thing that I handed out is just like one of these quickie things. The one, you know, the more than you needed to know thing, I believe it said 20, let's see, I think it was something like 85% was, 80% of the money, 85% would be used for homeless and related mental health.
My question is how much do they need? That 85%.
Well, it
1%
depends.
what they need, or-
Yeah, they can't put a figure on it. It'll be a lot of money. It'll be, you know, it'll
It doesn't even
be
give an estimate of what they need.
what they need. You know, the people who are against this say the homelessness problem is more than about money. And that's really what the opposition is on this measure, ULA. So this is what's interesting, and someone brought this up yesterday. This is a city measure. It's only on the ballot, it's on your sample ballot with no information in the back about who's opposing it, who's supporting it. I think it's really interesting. So if you have your sample ballots with you, and that was the first little guy you got. And I hope you have all signed up for Where's My Vote? All right, Where's My Vote? This will tell you, you know, when, I mean, oh, where's my ballot? I'm sorry, where's my ballot? Where's my ballot? Or ballot tracks, because it, you know, it told me your ballot's in the mail, and there it was. I say it's like watching my luggage get on the airplane, on my phone, right, and I'm telling you to get on. But it's in here, but there's no details. So just a few things about it, because I have gotten some big flyers in my mailbox. And this is a local measure. Again, a majority vote, and it's a citizen initiative, and it's asking us, should a special tax on the sale or transfer of real property valued over $5 million to fund affordable housing and tenant assistance programs be put on the ballot? So it's a real estate transfer tax on properties over $5 million. And you know, right now, publicly assisted housing is funded by a combination of loans and different bank credits, investments, government contracts, and the housing department of the city of LA administers these. And you may remember back in 2016, a majority of us passed Prop HHH, which was over a $1 billion bond measure to create 10,000 units of new housing. As of December 2021, 1,142 units have been built. Okay, so the 10,000. And if you may remember, our city controller, treasurer, Rod Galperin.
I think he's the controller.
Controller, our city controller, did an audit. Yeah, he did an audit. Thank you. And he felt that, you know, we're spending over $500,000 to build one unit of affordable housing. So obviously something needs to change, but you know, the goal is to increase. We don't have enough housing, affordable housing in this city. There's also tenant protections needed, assistance programs, building, giving money for programs that are helping people who are out of house, are unhoused. There would be two committees formed, a citizen oversight committee and a tenant council. And they would be appointed by the mayor, approved by the city council. And they would make recommendations on guidelines and monitor, what's needed. The fiscal impact, about 600 million and $1 billion will come in. It is the estimate. The arguments for this will increase the money available to move people off the streets. And this will go to purchase existing buildings, cut red tape. And those paying the taxes are millionaires and billionaires, quote unquote.
You did good, thank you.
Thank you. The arguments against are we already passed HHH, and look what, they haven't done, it hasn't done that much. There are contracts out though from HHH money that just hasn't been completed yet. My question was, how many of these funds just sitting there waiting for somebody to call, get them? But it's just the way it's structured and the way the loans have to be gotten that has stalled a lot of that. And the arguments say that this will only impact sellers of $5 to $10 million properties. But this is commercial and apartment buildings, of course. And the argument against is now we're going to have a bigger bureaucracy, 2 new governing boards. So a yes vote means you want to add this tax on the sale or transfer of these properties, over $5 million properties, and a no vote means you don't. And
It's not a sale. I don't know where that is on the ballot.
on the ballot, I'll show you, just hang on. The LA Times supports this and the Daily News opposes it. And the supporters include LA Family Housing, United Way, the County Federation of Labor, and opposition is Howard Jarvis and BizFed, which is a group of employers in LA County, hundreds of employers who work for or against legislation. So that does those. So now question, okay, I guess he asked his other question. Okay, so Murphy asked where it is. It's hard to find on your.
What's the number?
It's not a number, it's a ULA. There are 2 housing measures on your ballot. So I'm looking at my sample ballot. So they go in order of how this, okay. It's on of your sample ballot, there are no page
Yeah, there
numbers.
are LA 771.
Okay, 60016, LA 777 016. So it has some city and local officers, community college, and there are some other county and city measures to vote on.
771.
And this is the middle. It's on the bottom of the middle of
It's 771.
777 016. 016. Got it? Yeah.
Maybe in a different precinct, but it should lay out the same.
016.
There are 70 people like.
Okay, hang on. She has the same one on. Okay, here.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. No, it is hard to, but they're in descending order of the government,
By the time
levels
you
of
try to
government.
vote, are you exhausted?
Oh, am I
No,
exhausted?
no, by the time you
Oh.
start voting and finish voting.
Are you exhausted? Again, just remember of all those people who get killed because they want to have a democracy.
No, I'm
No,
not
I
disagreeing.
agree. No, I agree. You are. It is exhausting, and we are asked to make a lot of decisions. But Yeah, it's, since 1912 in California, we've been doing that. But thank you for your comments, for your
No, thank you.
interest.
Thank you very much.
And this